is always difficult to report the death of any race driver. They know the dangers and the hazards, and they choose to race because they love it so very much.
They went to put me back in a room, and they had already put Dale in the same room. They accidentally put me in there, and I was only in there a second, but I knew when I saw Dale it wasn't good.
A car through the rail in the first turn. It's Pagan. Pagan blew a tire, smashed through the guardrail, and rolled down the 40-foot embankment.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Head on into that Armco.
I thought I had a bad day. I realized that my bad day wasn't a bad day.
Before we get started with today's episode, I wanted to give a big shout out to two people in the comment section from the first video in the series. High Octane Cards was able to share an image from an incident in which I thought was virtually lost in time. This photo was taken after Terry Labonte's tremendous crash at Riverside Raceway in 1982. The photo was found in Greg Fielden's 40 Years of Stock Car Racing series of books, a wreck that was considered Terry's worst crash in his career. This was already a huge discovery, and I thought this was the most we would get from this incident. That was until another user, Panther44, found this in a NASCAR race in 1996.
But in November of 1982, it nearly ended. A serious crash at Riverside, California injured the man who would later become series champion.
This incident was unheard of to many, and I thought would never be seen by the naked eye 40 years later. But I'm happy to see that we can still find evidence of incidents that happened decades ago. I hope as this series continues, we can continually find these incidents. For now though, let's dive into the void and look at some incidents that are still lost.
For Tom Gladys. Oh, and a huge off, that's Jack Clark.
We don't typically see this issue in the world of NASCAR, but it does happen on occasion. The scary incident when something flies into the cockpit of where the driver is sitting. This was mostly common in the world of IndyCar and Formula One a few years back, as virtually nothing was protecting the driver from debris. Luckily for NASCAR drivers, they have been protected for years by windshields made out of Lexan material similar to bulletproof glass, meaning that not even lead could theoretically enter the car at any given moment, right? Well, in 2015, that thought quickly changed after a practice session at Iowa Speedway. Jamie Dick, a driver/owner of the number 55 Viva Motorsports Chevrolet, was looking to get his 2015 Xfinity season back on track after some unfortunate news of onset diabetes sidelined the driver for 5 points-paying races. All the driver wanted was to return to competition at Iowa Speedway and potentially earn a top 20 for the first time in over 2 years. It started off with a bang, but not the type of bang that any driver wants. While coming onto the racetrack, Jamie Dick was lined up right behind the JD Motorsports number 4 machine of Ross Chastain. As they were coming up to speed, it appeared that something came off the number 4 car. That something was a piece of lead, and it was heading right towards the number 55 car when suddenly I was following another car out, and when we pulled off pit road and got on the racetrack, I saw a piece of something. I thought it was a brake deck hose because it was silver and cylindrical. When we got down into the corner, I saw another piece of that fly out, and I kind of dodged it. Then a split second after that, the lead hit the windshield. I don't know if it was lead or tungsten, but whatever it was, it hit the windshield. I didn't even see it before it hit. I just saw the windshield cave in, and I felt it. I didn't even realize it hit me until we came in. I might have felt it, but everything happened so fast. You don't know exactly when you feel it. This was the aftermath of Jamie Dick's 55 Camaro after a piece of lead impaled Dick's car in the upper left portion of its windshield. Not only did it destroy the laminated windshield, but it also struck Jamie in the side of the helmet, leaving a noticeable dent. Dick was checked for concussion symptoms and cleared in the infield care center and said he felt fine, which was surprising seeing the extent of the damage. JD Motorsports and Ross Chastain both felt extremely bad about the situation and checked on the driver of Viva Motorsports and apologized for the loose lead on the car. But from what I've seen, Viva Motorsports forgave the team and driver for the incident. NASCAR, though, levied a $15,000 penalty for the incident, as the loose weight was due to improperly secured ballast. No footage of the incident takes place, and all we have are the photos of the damaged number 55 car. To say that no one was injured from this improper securement was a blessing, as this could have potentially hit a fan or official if the lead fell out at a bad angle. This would be Jamie Dick's third to last race in the Xfinity Series, as it appeared that his diabetes didn't allow him to continue his racing career. However, I am sure that Jamie is thankful that his Iowa practice session wasn't his last behind the wheel of a race car. Crashes that seem to always be lost in time are ones that happen at testing sessions. Today, NASCAR does a few tire tests here and there, but back in the early 2000s, test sessions were being done on a regular basis for all types of teams. Honestly, I could make a series just on testing sessions alone, but for a series like this, I feel like this is the best place where they belong. Some crashes at test sessions have been described to be some of the most brutal, and there is one that is considered one of the worst that is being slowly forgotten to time.
Trouble turn one car sliding on its roof toward turn 2. That is Shane Hall.
Shane Hall was a regular in the NASCAR Busch Series from 1996 to 2002. Although he ran races all the way till 2008, they were few and far between. Hall could be best described as a journeyman in the sport. Throughout 191 races in his NASCAR career, he managed to finish inside the top 10 only 6 times. One of his most strenuous seasons came at the turn of the millennium with a team known as Alumni Motorsports, a brand new team that entered the Busch Series in 2000 with Ohio State University as their sponsorship. On paper, this team should have at the very least been qualifying for races, having one of the largest universities back in their program. However, that was not the case, as Shane made only one race for the team. Could it have been multiple reasons why the team failed? I'm sure it was. However, I felt like one of the first signs that this wasn't going to go well was a testing session that happened on January 31st of that year. At Las Vegas Motor Speedway, a testing session was being done for both the Cup and Busch Series. Shane Hall and his team were at the testing session looking to get a head start on what was needed for the mile-and-a-half racetracks in 2000. At first, everything seemed normal for the team and the session itself. That was until problems emerged coming out of turns 1 and 2 when the number 0 car had steering issues. It was reported that as Shane Hall exited turn 2 that the car's steering column failed, causing the car to scrape the outside wall and violently turn towards the inside wall on the backstretch. The car lost little to no speed as it went careening into the tire wall, shooting the car into a somersault and flipping multiple times. It was reported to flip at least 5 times before the car finally came to rest. This photo is the aftermath of what the car looked like after the crash. As you can see, the roll cage was cut through in order to retrieve the injured driver. Shane Hall was knocked unconscious from the impact and wound up suffering a fracture in his ankle. A rather minor injury compared to the gruesome aftermath of the car itself. Turns out those tire barriers were only placed there due to an American Le Mans race that ran at the track only months prior. If it weren't for those tires, then perhaps Shane would have not have been as fortunate as he was. After this day, Shane Hall unfortunately only qualified for one race with the team before he was let go prior to the 7th race, and the team closed its doors after the 28th race of the season. So sadly, there is not a good ending for this team or driver. The only thing we virtually have left are these scary photos of the aftermath of Shane Hall's car after that January testing session. Many people know that one of the first implementations of the window net in NASCAR was due to a terrifying accident that happened to Richard Petty at Darlington. The incident was brutal in its own right, only made worse with the King himself partially hanging out of the car. This wreck right here is what was responsible for the window netting in NASCAR, a safety device that covers the driver's side window of a race car that prevents debris coming in and drivers from falling out. For the most part, this design by the Pettys has mostly stayed the same for many years and has seen little changes. Well, for the first 15 years, that was true. However, there was one incident that happened in 1985 that changed the way the window nets were constructed, and it's from an incident that was never videoed and from a driver hardly anyone knows about. The driver in our final story is Francis Affleck, a driver from Saskatchewan, Canada. Affleck got his start in racing thanks to the late model series in the US Northeast region. Although not a championship contender, Francis Affleck did show some talent as a driver, so much so that he decided to move up to the States in the late 70s to compete in both NASCAR and the ARCA Series. Francis didn't start his Busch Series career, however, until 1984. It was pretty short-lived as he only ran in 3 races. One of them, he finished inside the top 20, but ended in a DNF with a destroyed race car. Still, Francis Affleck wanted to continue his journey in racing and decided to run in the ARCA Series in 1985, first starting at Daytona International Speedway. For many beginning drivers, this is a solid move, but the same could not be said for Francis Affleck, as he signed up for what would have been his last ever race. Francis Affleck entered the ARCA race with his 09 car for the Daytona 200 race. He was no stranger to the track, as this would be his 5th start at this point at Daytona, but he was no veteran. On Thursday, February 7th of 1985, Francis was trying to log in some laps in order to gain as much experience as he possibly could for race day. At first, everything seemed normal. Then as Francis was going into turns 1 and 2, his car went sideways between the turns. What happened next could only be described as a complete nightmare. As Francis Affleck's 09 car went towards the infield, the car went airborne and barrel rolled end over end at least 7 or 8 times. While the car was flipping, the protective window netting on the car broke, causing Affleck to be thrown partially out of his car. This left Francis fully exposed to receive the brunt force of flying debris, his own car, and the earth underneath. When the car finally came to rest, Francis was pinned underneath the car, suffering from severe head and neck injuries. There was no chance of the driver surviving. He was only 34 years old and became ARCA's first driver to be fatally injured at the Daytona International Speedway in its then 26-year history. This accident has no video, as it was only a practice session for the race. There was a cameraman, however, who was able to snap photos of the crash while it took place. And while those photos can be found online, I would advise not to look at them, as some photos show Francis coming out of the car, an image that's beyond horrifying to witness. After this crash, protective netting was modified to sustain a harder impact as well as widened out to cover as much of the opening as possible. To my knowledge, we have not seen another window netting fail that caused a driver to be ejected ever since, which is an amazing thing to say, but unfortunately, it took a driver in the ARCA series to lose his life in a practice accident before that change was made, making it one of the most important crashes to safety in racing that has been virtually lost in time.